Okay, session the third of my West Marches style campaign. This, I believe, was a real make it or break it session. I had intended to have 4 players, a real party number of players for this session. Unfortunately, a number of them had caught the Black Plague during their Thanksgiving festivities, and as such, were not able to make it. Because of this, the energy from my players was certainly on the low side, which is not exactly what you hope to see when you're DMing. When more than half the people are in that low energy state and they're just playing because we had already planned it out and everyone's here, it doesn't bode well for the rest of the campaign. But I do believe this is sort of like a litmus test of sorts for a campaign, because if you can get over this hurdle of a low energy session that the players just aren't really feeling it, and if you can get past that, then hopefully you can just keep getting past it again in the future. Now, I guess the real problem is if you have multiple of these kinds of sessions in a row. So I'm going to have to really make sure the next one, I'm just going to have to hope to God that the players are feeling it that time. Do the best I can there. So this session, we pick up Adrian, his downtime from last session. He does some gambling. This time, he attempts some thieving and cheating, and he gets caught, and he gets banned from the tavern that had oh so generously offered him free room and board in exchange of him like providing free entertainment during the nights that he stays there. So he got banned from there, so he needs to find a new place to stay. Cletus, he did some combat training. He was getting ready for his next upcoming venture. So they meet up in the nice tavern, the like high-end tavern that Cletus is staying in, the Dish and Spoon. While there, they run into a noble by the name of Baron de Tours Savoy, who has just recently gotten out of an argument in that same tavern just minutes before with his cattle ranchers that he had hired to help him take 200 longhorns to the dwarven hold of Kern Darum that Cletus and Adrian are trying to get to anyway. So they agree to help this baron who's offered them a payment of 300 gold pieces to help him with this task. And they do ask why his previous cattle ranchers, his hired hands, had decided to quit when they were so close to their destination. And he had informed them that some ruffians had been harassing them. This is not entirely untrue, because in fact, the Baron does have a rival that he is trying to beat in terms of completing this like trade deal with these dwarves, because these dwarves, unbeknownst to the players, had made an offer for multiple hundred longhorn for a festival they are preparing for, and they were giving a high price to the first merchants that could deliver the goods. This baron was quite desperate himself because he is very much so poor, at least in the grand scheme of nobles, and he needed this to work out. So they head out of this town. On the road to the dwarf hold, they encounter some highwaymen. These are of the same group of the highwaymen that had stopped them in the first session Cletus and Adrian were in. I did intend to tie this in with one of the other players that I had hoped was going to be there, but he did not make it. So these were just basically bandits to them that tried to rob them. They dealt with them pretty easily. They stole one of their horses, so they made a bit of a profit. Nothing went wrong in this first encounter. Second encounter, a few days later, they are attacked by a bulette. Uh, they and when the bulette just like burrowing in the earth and chops out and like grabs a cow and is getting its meal in. But they start attacking the bulette, and that angers it. And the bulette starts attacking the party. And one of its attacks, it leaps out at the Baron, killing him instantly. And I will say that this was the sort of turning point of the session, because I don't think anyone was expecting this to happen, neither me nor the players, when the Baron was killed by this bulette. So the players loot his body and take all his stuff, and they just decide they're going to just complete this contract trade deal and hopefully just make even more money than whatever the Baron was going to pay them. And so they're only like a day away from the dwarf hold at this point when they run into well, they are not aware of this, but this is the rival group of cattle ranchers that is trying to beat the players to this deal. Had the Baron been alive, then he could have informed the players, but instead they just encountered another group of multiple hundred steers and cattle and all them being led by ranchers. Now, my expectation, my intent was for them to sabotage or somehow disrupt this other group so that they could get there first. But the players, the source of information, the Baron that was going to tell them about all these things, obviously wasn't there anymore to be able to do so. So they mostly just ignore this other group, and the other group gets there to the hold first and completes the deal, and the players show up some number of hours after them. They get to the gate. The dwarves say that they don't have any need for the cattle at this point and offer them they offer them a 700 gold 700 gold for the 200 cattle, which the players with a successful appraise check did come to discover that the cattle are worth 2,000 gold at like fair market value. But they decline the 700 gold and instead attempt a little cheeky maneuver where they try to deceive the dwarves. They had said that the previous ranchers that they had encountered that herd and that they have some hard to detect cattle disease, but it would make them inedible. The dwarves, however, see through this ruse and are quite insulted by the attempt of trickery. Their first reaction is to turn away the players entirely before they get themselves killed with any further talk of insults and lies and all that. But eventually the players come to an agreement and say that they will sell their 200 cattle for 300 gold pieces. So they do make the amount of gold they were originally going to make from the Baron, but they basically sold these cows for next to nothing. But they do get entry inside of the hold. Cletus is able to get his brother Cletok properly interred. He gets all the burial rites and funerary rites and all that jazz. Adrian asks around about Marquide. He doesn't do particularly well, especially because the dwarves already have a sort of distaste for him from his chicanery he's been trying to get up to, or that he tried to pull off. But he does discover that Marquide was here and that he has now gone to a place that's said to have a great deal of lizard men living there that he apparently plans on taking as his slaves. And that concludes this session, the third. So here's hoping that we do make it to session the fourth. I did try to keep or at least I did intentionally try to have like a whole self-contained narrative in a single session, like one full like one shot's worth of content, and there were definitely some things I could have done better. I do think the what I had sort of intended as the climax of the session with these rival cattle ranchers just completely like sputtered out and failed. I should have made it much more obvious to the players that there was like a conflict between them and that they should have tried to stop them. Um, but that ended up just becoming nothing. So it's slightly anticlimactic during what I had intended to be like the high point of the drama of the session. But the bulette attack and killing the Baron was a little bit of like a twist, a little bit of an unexpected turn that brought engagement back up. Um, but yeah, so here's hoping session 4 will be better. Who knows?